Stands for the angel of paradise. Tall white, tall white, tall white, tall white. Holographic projection, tall white physical encounters. Tall white, tall white, tall white, tall white.
Catastrophic disclosure. Catastrophic disclosure.
I think it's drones. Drones.
Catastrophic disclosure. Catastrophic disclosure.
I think it's drones. Garbage peddling, hoax promoting, huckster.
Holographic projection, tall white physical encounters.
Garbage peddling, hoax promoting, huckster.
That stands for the angel of paradise.
Porn bots have arrived. Porn bots have arrived.
Tall white, tall white, tall white, tall white.
I think it's drones.
Tall white, tall white, tall white, tall white.
Drones.
Tall white, tall white, tall white, tall white.
Greetings and salutations, friends, and welcome back. Tonight we are going to be giving sort of a history lesson on techno scams and Joe Firmage, or what has been described as alleged techno scams run by Joe Firmage. There's an awful lot of information to share with you tonight. But before we get started, I just want to take a moment to offer a word of caution, because suddenly people are sending me all these links saying, oh, the Anna Paulina Luna said she saw videos of alien bodies, so it must all be true. And I would just strongly caution anybody. After all, we were the only show that reported on this. Anna Paulina Luna knows nothing about UFOs or aliens. In fact, she was preparing some sort of briefing or presentation, and she included in a tweet a bunch of pictures of this presentation, and it was absolutely totally filled with fake pictures of UFOs, proven hoaxed fake UFO cases of the past, fake UFO pictures of the past. So for her to say, oh, I saw a video of an alien body means absolutely nothing. And I heard Go Kicks Rock Jess on Twitter saying we should start a betting pool. Which video is it? Is it the alien autopsy video? Is it the video from the Roswell Hollywood movie that gets passed around all the time as real video of alien bodies being recovered? Is it that scene from that X-Files episode that often also gets passed around with pictures or video of alien bodies? Yeah, until there is some sort of clarification on what exactly she saw, I'm just going to straight call bullshit on Anna Paulina Luna. And there's a reason that we have to do that, is because she was preparing a whole presentation that was just filled with completely and totally fake pictures of UFOs. She's not a good judge, and she also doesn't know the history of this thing. Whereas, you know, I think if you showed a video purporting to be of alien bodies to someone like me or Jesco Kick Rocks or you know, 100 other people that have, you know, a working knowledge of the history of this thing, we'd be able to quickly identify if this was something new or one of those same old hoaxes that just gets repeated time and time again and posted time and time again. I see these things come across, those 3 videos come across my Twitter feed almost every day. And there's, you know, some idiot posting them going, these videos are real. No, they're not. And anyway, I just want to put that out there. We'll try to transfer to the subject of tonight's presentation. And I've actually written something about this that I call Beware the Mirage, Unraveling the Web of Techno Investment Scams. In a world driven by technological innovation, the allure of investing in the next big thing can be sometimes irresistible. However, amidst the promises of revolutionary breakthroughs and exponential returns of money lies a very treacherous landscape that is riddled with deception and deceit. Techno or technology-based investment scams have long preyed upon the unsuspecting, leaving behind a trail of shattered dreams and depleted bank accounts. As we delve into the annals of history, we can uncover the sinister underbelly of these schemes and scams, exposing the dangers lurking beneath the facade of technological progress. One of the most notorious examples of a technology-based Ponzi scheme dates back to the early 2000s with the rise and fall of the infamous MMM Global, founded by Sergey Mavradi. This company enticed investors with the promises of astronomical returns through a purportedly revolutionary financial pyramid. Operating under the guise of a legitimate investment platform, this company utilized a network of affiliates to lure in unsuspecting victims, promising them lucrative profits in exchange for their hard-earned cash. However, as the scheme inevitably unraveled, investors were left reeling from substantial losses, while the people running the scam vanished into the shadows, leaving behind a legacy of deceit and despair. More recently, the saga of Theranos serves as a cautionary tale about the perils of investing in completely unproven technology. Founded by Elizabeth Holmes, the disgraced former CEO, Theranos claimed to have developed groundbreaking blood testing technology capable of revolutionizing the entire healthcare industry. With promises of rapid diagnostic results and evaluation that soared to billions of dollars, investors flocked to pour their funds into the company. However, as the scrutiny mounted and allegations of widespread fraud surfaced, the house of cards came crashing down, ultimately resulting in criminal charges against Holmes and exposing the fallacy of Theranos' purported technological prowess and innovation. So the dangers of techno investment scams extend far beyond the realm of headline-grabbing scandals. In an era characterized by rapid technological advancement, the allure of investing in emerging technologies can often blind even the most discerning investors to the inherent risks involved, whether it be the blockchain, cryptocurrency, artificial intelligence, or emerging biotechnologies. The promises of revolutionary breakthroughs often serve as fertile ground for fraudsters seeking to exploit investors for personal gain. Central to the success of these scams is the art of persuasion, as often charismatic individuals adept at spinning tales of grandeur lure in unsuspecting victims with promises of untold riches. Through slick marketing tactics and elaborate presentations, these purveyors of deceit paint a rosy picture of a future fueled by their technological innovations, enticing investors to part ways with their money in pursuit of a slice of the proverbial pie. However, beneath the veneer of legitimacy of some of these scams lies a stark reality. The vast majority of these ventures are nothing more than elaborate Ponzi schemes, designed to collapse under the weight of their own deception. With little to no tangible evidence of the technological viability or sustainability of their business models, investors are often left holding the bag as their investments evaporate into thin air. The dangers of techno investment scams cannot be overstated. Beyond the financial ramifications, these schemes erode the trust in legitimate technological innovation, often casting a shadow of doubt over real and genuine efforts to drive progress, innovation, and change. As such, it is imperative that investors remain vigilant and exercise due diligence when considering investment opportunities in the tech sector. Blind faith and promises of quick riches only serves to line the pockets of fraudsters, leaving behind a trail of shattered dreams and broken promises in its wake. So these techno investment scams, and by the way, TTSA with Tom DeLonge and Lou Elizondo and Christopher Mellon and others has been described as a techno investment scam. These techno investment scams represent a pervasive threat in an increasingly digitized world. From historical examples that we have provided to you to more recent debacles like Theranos or TTSA, wherein several $1 million was taken from investors and no investors got any of their money back, to my knowledge. The dangers of investing in unproven technology cannot be overstated. As investors navigate the complex landscape of technological innovation, caution must be exercised to avoid falling prey to the siren song of false promises and deceit. Only through informed decision-making and vigilant scrutiny can we hope to safeguard against the perils of these techno investment scams and foster a culture of trust and ingenuity in the pursuit of progress. So tonight's show is actually about Joe Firmage, who many people believe laid the groundwork for To the Stars Academy. In fact, somebody tweeted on Twitter, which I found interesting, that Joe Firmage actually started a company, Ad Astra, before To the Stars. And Ad Astra is basically To the Stars. And isn't it interesting that some of the same people that would be involved in the TTSA techno scam, or what has been called a techno scam, or alleged as a techno scam, like Hal Puthoff, were also directly involved in some of Joe Firmage's alleged techno investment scams. And please pardon me if I continue to use the word alleged throughout this broadcast. However, I do believe that everybody deserves their day in court. So until somebody is convicted of an actual crime, I will use the proper term alleged crime or, alleged criminal activity, whatever the case may be, just in total fairness. And it's interesting that Joe Firmage was involved with Hal Puthoff in what can basically be described as an anti-gravity scam. And even well-known people you would think would be too intelligent to be fooled by, fake anti-gravity, people like, Brandon Fugel, the owner of the Skinwalker Ranch, were allegedly scammed out of millions of dollars by this person, Joe Firmage. And he never produced the working results that he promised after collecting millions and millions of dollars in investment money. It's interesting to note that Joe Firmage was much more successful as an alleged techno scammer than the whole group of TTSA. The whole group of TTSA only gathered a few $1 million. Joe Firmage, there's various estimates I've seen between $35 and $100 million he was able to get from investors. He's being sued, and the suit specifically mentions 35. Well, we're going to go over all of that, so let's not get to the specifics just yet. Interestingly, Mr. Firmage has been called a Utah entrepreneur facing federal lawsuit, and the headline reads, is now charged with financially exploiting an 80-year-old woman. We will explore all of this with you tonight. We'll take a moment to recognize and welcome in the live chat, whether you're chatting on our Rumble chat, our Instagram live chat, our Facebook live feeds, our Twitter live feed, or here on YouTube, as well as Twitch. Welcome one and all. So I thought it'd be interesting if we can do some time traveling here and look into some early claims. Joe Firmage, after all, is essentially a UFO guy, an experiencer who claimed to have experienced non-human intelligence. Before we get too deep into the presentation, I just wanted to share with you an early video that somebody tweeted earlier that I thought would be a good idea here, because this kind of shows what this person, the kind of belief system that he was espousing while promising people things like free energy and anti-gravity. And there has been a great deal of scrutiny about this person, especially recently. So I, for one, was pretty shocked to see that he was arrested for criminal charges. There's multiple federal lawsuits. There's SEC investigations into his alleged investment scams. There's a lawsuit alleging that he was running a Ponzi scheme and more. But now he's facing criminal charges for essentially ripping off an 80-year-old woman and elder abuse. We'll get into more of that, but let's begin with an earlier interview of his so we can hear a little bit about his belief system and his claims of alien contact.
Industry executive in California, Joe Firmage, has changed his life completely after.
1 second. And it should be noted that Mr. Firmage left a very successful tech company. And there was a great deal of controversy about it at the time because he was essentially claiming that he's changing his whole life because he's had contact with extraterrestrials or non-human intelligence. We're going to get more deeply into all of this. And let me put my fair use banner up. This is a transformative work. We are educating the public and critiquing the video that we are sharing. This is a transformative work. This is the textbook definition of fair use, friends.
After what he believed was an unearthly apparition. He has now set up his International Space Sciences Organization, and he is spending millions to research what life could be like, what he thinks it might be like beyond our solar system. Joe Firmage has come into our San Francisco studio. Mr. Firmage, good morning. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning. How are you?
Very well, thank you. People are saying that anyone who sacrifices a chief executive officer career like yours and millions of dollars must be crazy. Are you?
Well, it depends on the perspective you come from. I will leave the answer to that question to the history books.
Yeah, well, I think the history books are going to kind of speak. This man's got multiple lawsuits for allegedly running Ponzi investment schemes and scams, and he's been criminally charged. But we'll, give him his day in court before drawing any more conclusions.
But you've sunk millions of dollars into this. Why? What's the purpose?
Well, the purpose is to help raise the consciousness of people all over the world to pay attention to some things that are more important than what we're going to cook for dinner this evening.
So precisely what is it you're saying?
His purpose is to raise everybody's consciousness. Have we heard those buzzwords around the UFO community before? And apparently, Mr. Firmage started his scientific research into these anti-gravity devices with his own money, but then started taking an awful lot of money, millions and millions of dollars from other people.
I mean, let's get down to the specifics here.
Let me be clear. What I am basically saying is that the grand sweeping saga of human history does have a direction. It has a point. It has a path and a trajectory. And that trajectory is clearly pointing towards the day, and I think someday in the not too distant future, when we will break through the constraint of gravity that holds us to this world. We will be able to voyage one day beyond our solar system.
Yes, and Joe Firmage promised investors that he would be the person to make that leap. And isn't it interesting that essentially Joe Firmage is promising people the same things that other people? I believe that what we are witnessing here is the birth of the TTSA, alleged TTSA techno scam. Remember, they were going to promise a spaceship with a revolutionary power source that would change the world, right? And David Wilcock promised people revolutionary technology, hover cars that would change the world. Sometimes I'm struggling to come up with a proper term. Let's just say UFO Jesus, right? Oh no, that's taken. UFO prophets of disclosure. They all have delusions of grandeur. That David Wilcock has said he's the Archangel Michael told him that he's going to be the father of anti-gravity, just like the Wright brothers. And Tom DeLonge and the TTSA crowd were promising people to build a literal spaceship with investors' money. And I think that the seed or root of all those ideas came from Joe Firmage, who has been running this a long time previous to those guys.
And visit other worlds. Why do I reach that conclusion? Well, 3 reasons. Number 1, there's overwhelming evidence from virtually every nation and every culture on Earth throughout the history books and into recent times of unusual phenomena. Many people call it UFOs, or unidentified flying objects.
Notice to use the term overwhelming evidence.
Flying around in the skies. There's overwhelmingly consistent and good evidence that that is in fact occurring.
I'd like to see that overwhelming and good evidence, because so far what we get is blurry pictures and a lot of stories and a lot of hoaxes and a lot of fraudsters and a lot of scam artists and a lot of con artists and a lot of profiteering UFO celebrities. But I don't think that there's overwhelming good evidence, but okay.
Reason number 2, there are rigorously peer-reviewed physics papers that are now in print, that have only become in print in the last 5 years or so, that clearly suggest how this could work.
Yes, and I believe that right here he's referencing Eric Davis's wackadoo, space portal papers, right?
And third,
or maybe he's referencing Hal Puthoff, who was directly involved in some of his efforts to allegedly defraud the public out of investor money to create to create anti-gravity devices.
The opportunity that I've had, having entered this space, is to meet with some of the most senior military and scientific people in the United States of America.
Now, listen, here's where it gets interesting. He's about to say, this is from 6 years ago, but I believe that the original interview is from even further back. This is the 90s. And he's about to say that top-ranking military and intelligence officials have confirmed for him the reality of extraterrestrial visitation on Earth. Does this sound familiar to anybody else? Like, I don't know, Dave Grush spoke to top-ranking military and intelligence people who confirmed for him visitation by aliens on Earth?
Who have privately confirmed to me the reality of the UFO phenomenon.
Now, you claim to have had a personal encounter with an otherworldly being. Tell me about that.
I was reading papers which for the first time clearly describe a way to engineer gravity. That's a revolutionary concept. And so one night, after reading one of these papers, I went to sleep, and the next morning I had a rather unusual experience. I referred to it more like a near-death experience than an actual encounter, because the being that I saw in my bedroom was more like an image than a tangible object.
In other interviews, he admitted it could have been a dream.
But we had a very interesting conversation, and it was quite germane to the subject that I had been studying.
So tell me about the conversation, because you expressed a willingness to die at one stage in the conversation.
Yes, it was sort of halfway between sleep and awake.
Halfway between sleep and awake is when he had his so-called non-human intelligence contact or experience.
I had a conversation with this image, and he said, "Why have you bothered me?" He looked perplexed and bothered. "Why have you bothered me?" And I said, "Because I want to travel in space." And he chuckled and said, "Well, why should you have that opportunity?" And I said, "Because I'm willing to die for it." I've studied the domains of astronomy and physics all my life, and so that's always been a deeply hidden passion of mine, a dream, if you will.
Sounds to me like somebody got too far down the rabbit hole, but let's continue.
Well, and so it was an appropriate response.
What do you say to those people who would argue that all you're doing is trying to cash in on the enduring UFO craze?
Sure. Well, look, that's a fair criticism from afar, but if you look at the facts, this has cost me a lot of money, and it's going to cost a lot more money. I haven't made a dime on this venture, and I have no profit motive to speak of.
He has no profit motive to speak of, but he would go on to collect millions and millions and millions of dollars in investment capital into his anti-gravity various adventures. So this is probably an early interview before he started collecting millions and millions of dollars. But here he is saying he has no profit motive.
Basically simply trying to share 15 years worth of research into a domain which I consider to be the most important domain of study, period, today.
Have we heard that before in the UFO community? This is the most important field of study today.
I think it's very important that people wake up and just consider that some advanced civilizations out there in the vast cosmos that we see at night have figured out the answers to the physics questions that we are now just gaining a glimpse of.
And this is an often used trope. I often wonder, like, why do we always assume that aliens are more technologically advanced than us, more spiritually advanced than us? What if they're dumber than us? What if there are aliens out there, but they're dumber than us? That's a scary thought. And it's interesting that so many of these UFO, proponents are all basically say the same things that people have been saying since the 1950s. Oh, our space brothers, they know about free energy. Our space brothers, they know about anti-gravity. And we could learn that technology from them and elevate our species and our consciousness. It's basically a plot device used by hundreds of these people.
If they have, then not only is the UFO phenomenon plausible, it is overwhelmingly probable. And any physicist will tell you the same thing.
Because
any physicist will tell you it's overwhelmingly probable. Okay, these generalizations sound more like a true believer spouting his pre-existent faith-based beliefs rather than somebody that has evidence-based beliefs.
could also be suggested that you're trying to start a new religion.
Well, it could be suggested, but that would be inaccurate. I am trying to initiate something like a movement to expose people to a broader worldview than what they see every day on television.
So far, all we know that he's exposed people to is financial ruin, allegedly.
You have expressed a willingness to die. Are you not asking others to join you?
Oh, of course not. That's ridiculous. The discussion that I had that one morning, halfway between waking and sleeping, I don't know how to characterize. I didn't claim it was an alien encounter. I've reported it as it happened, as it was. I am not asking people to do anything other than read and consider.
Well, later he will ask people to invest in his anti-gravity company.
Consider and study. I think this is something that's fundamentally important, but it would be grossly inaccurate to characterize this as any sort of cult.
Okay.
It's definitely not a cult. Well, let's take a moment. He's got faith-based beliefs. He's claiming there's overwhelming evidence, but he can't show us any. Sounds like a cult to me.
We'll leave it there. Thank you so much for your time.
All right. So I just wanted to give you, some of the historical perspective. But I was able to find some really interesting previous work done by some other researchers, including Robert Schaefer from Bad UFOs blog. And we're going to go over some of this. Sort of a history lesson of his various, what could only be described, I suppose, as alleged schemes and scams. And I did not know this until today, though I do believe that Mr. Kiviat has talked about Mr. Firmage on a previous broadcast. The anti-gravity lawsuit Robert Kvyat was a producer of the famous Alien Autopsy TV program and many other far-out programs. So apparently, Robert Kvyat, who has been a previous guest here, apparently sued Joe Firmage. The first person named in the suit is Joseph Firmage, a one-time Silicon Valley multimillionaire, now apparently former multimillionaire, who might be said to have founded the first To the Stars venture with his International Space Sciences Organization, ISSO, in 1999, which lasted only 18 months, according to American Anti-Gravity. In 2001, a California defense contractor built a small replication of the Nazi Bell device, and it produced effects just as Igor Witkowski and Nick Cook had reported on the original project. The Nazi Bell replication was built by Sarah under funding from Joe Firmage, Joe Firmage's ISSO startup, and developed around an applied engineering model of Einstein's unified field theory. In short, it was a modern attempt at a scale replication of the original Nazi Bell experiment. So he's funding people to build the Nazi Bell. Great. Based largely on their interpretation of the original Bell design. The Nazi Bell replication is important because it offers validation for the research of Igor Witkowski and Nick Cook, but also because it demonstrates the application of theories proposed by Dr. James Quorum and John Deering that offer explanations for not only the Nazi Bell experiment, but for the Philadelphia experiment and the Hutchinson effect as well. Now, this is propaganda from somebody running an alleged techno scam. Hey, we've reproduced the effects of the Nazi Bell. Great. And they're saying that it basically legitimizes the Philadelphia experiment, which was a complete and total fake story and a hoax. And the Hutchinson effect, which again, I believe is a complete and total fake hoax. After all, Hutchinson has been caught using strings and faking anti-gravity effects, right? The Nazi Bell replication that Kuroma and Deering participated in was related to World War II German research, but the modern replication had been financed by Joe Firmage's ISSO startup for about $1.2 million and wasn't an exact replica of the original device. Sarah's version was much smaller, about 100 watts, and they modified the design since they didn't know many of the details of the original Bell's construction. The so-called Nazi Bell is a supposed prototype Nazi superweapon developed in secret during World War II, and according to some, the Bell was a power source behind the Nazi flying saucers. Of course, there is no real evidence that such a Bell ever existed, or that Firmage's ISSO built one. So they just claimed that they built a Nazi Bell, and this proves that the technology is real. And hey, invest in our company, right? In September 2000, Firmage sponsored a by-invitation-only conference, Encounters at Indian Head, to look at the famous alleged UFO abduction of Betty and Barney Hill. This conference in which I participated was secret at the time and was only declassified, so to speak, several years later when its proceedings were finally published. So he's running UFO conferences that are invitation only. Does that sound familiar? Kind of like the Seoul conference was invitation only, and even people with real press credentials wouldn't be allowed in if they showed up. It's invitation only, right? And this article by Mr. Schaefer, by the way, I'm a bad show host today and was rushing to go to broadcast tonight. I will include all the links we share in the description of the video as soon as the broadcast ends. One Cosmos, under the leadership of Joe Firmage and Ann Druin, is forming a new type of visionary appliance of partners in finance, science, learning, media, and entertainment to create an integrated experience network. Does that sound familiar? Science, learning, media, and entertainment. This is TTSA, the prototype to TTSA. And remember, Hal Puthoff was involved with Joe Firmage with this stuff. So isn't it interesting that TTSA basically was making the same promises after Joe Firmage failed to deliver on all of his promises, but collected millions and millions of dollars. The venture was not financially successful. Some of Firmage's other weird ventures include Many One Networks, Intend Change, International Academy of Science and Arts, InterNASA, and Motion Physics, none of which seems to have been particularly successful. Here's an excerpt from Firmage's presentation to a Planet Work conference. Our mission is about the possibility that we will be able to explore the Milky Way galaxy in an interstellar spacecraft within your lifetime. Our mission is about helping to enable a renewal of human civilization and nature as a whole. Great. The theoretical group within Motion Sciences has operated for 2 years as the California Institute for Physics and Astrophysics, CIPA, and is led by Dr. Bernard Heisch, formerly of Lockheed Martin, whose work in the field is an outgrowth of NASA's research contract, inertia and gravitation in the zero-point field model. So there is the free energy connection, 0 point. It's free energy. Great. And here's where it gets interesting. Note that the work of Hal Puthoff, co-founder and vice president of science and technology of Tom DeLonge's To the Stars Academy, is cited here. That free energy from a vacuum or 0 point energy is one of its main claims. So isn't it interesting that Mr. Firmage is soliciting investors based on Hal Puthoff's wackadoo theories that have never been proven or shown to be real? And Hal Puthoff is involved somehow here, and then he becomes the co-founder and vice president of science and technology for another alleged techno scam in the form of TTSA. More recently, Firmage claims to be developing an anti-gravity faster-than-light propulsion system, and he has a video promoting it. Supposedly, it will provide not only anti-gravity lift, but faster-than-light travel. Supposedly, the device entered functional testing in October 2015. However, no further information about it has been released. Yeah, long story short, it didn't work. Yeah. And here's where it gets interesting. Bob Kvyat has even started a GoFundMe page to help my lawsuit and end government secrecy. Kvyat's GoFundMe page explores additional explanation of what the lawsuit is about. I began talking to a company called InterNASA, directly with its CEO, former Silicon Valley millionaire and entrepreneur Joe Firmage, who told me he was being backed by Ron Pandolfi, the aforementioned top CIA scientist. Firmage also claimed to be on the verge of proving gravity control was a reality. After Firmage had assured my attorney he had secured the necessary operating capital, I accepted a contracted employment position to run the company's news, PR, and overall media division. But when my dedicated work covering many critical aspects of the company's activities went unpaid for many months and the prototype gravity control device stalled in development, I investigated and found out that Pandolfi, who ran something called the CIA's Weirdness, has seemingly been orchestrating a disinformation operation all along, known as a flytrap scheme, where honest people's skills, talents, and in my case, considerable TV and media experience are usurped and played with, somewhat maliciously, without any concern for proper financial compensation to those involved. Presently, former Congressman Marriott is only covering technical improvements on InterNASA's gravity control device, motivated by Pandolfi, with the exception of a $5,000 payment to me, which Marriott's lawyers now claim was just to be nice. Since Pandolfi is essentially the one CIA science officer who's also widely thought to be the keeper of America's most guarded UFO secrets, I decided to file the civil lawsuit to not only receive the substantial contracted employment salary arrears InterNASA currently owes me, which I sorely need with one teenage son about to enter college and another soon thereafter, but also use the vast power of the court of law as a result of this legal action to get to the bottom of the UFO enigma and what our government actually knows. So Kvyat only raised about $320 of the targeted $250,000, which means he is well over 1,000th of the way to the goal. Firmage seems to have fallen on hard times. It says here, in recent years, Firmage seems to have fallen on hard times. He continues to pursue business ventures, but apparently without a lot of success. Firmage was arrested for DUI in February 2011, in June, and again in November 2013, and in March 2014. In 2016, Joe Firmage and his mother filed for bankruptcy to avoid the sale of jointly owned real properties. His venture, Many One Networks, apparently did not pay its employees for about a year. Even if Kiviat does get a judgment against Firmage, it doesn't seem likely that he would collect very much. Update: the anti-gravity lawsuit has been dismissed. One of the major investors in Firmage's dubious technologies was Brandon Fugel, the owner of Skinwalker Ranch. So there's some interesting history and at least one proof that this person is an alleged scammer. This is a real problem, and it gets better or worse depending on your point of view, I suppose. It's worse if you're one of the people that got scammed. But better if you're one of the scammers making all of this money and just refusing to pay people money that was owed to them. So we've still got our fair use banner. And if you recognize the name Joe Firmage, and you are familiar with the basement office and the reporting of Stephen Greenstreet, a lot of this story is going to sound familiar to you. In a recent broadcast, Spooky Hustlers, how wacky UFO activists and crazy ghost hunters, well, let's just share this, duped Congress into chasing UFOs. This is fair use. This is transformative work. We're educating the public. There's an excellent section when Greenstreet interviews Brandon Fugel all about this Joe Firmage and the alleged techno scams. Apparently, Mr. Fugel put in millions and millions of dollars into this guy and his various claims. Let's listen.
There is one more item in Brandon's collection, and it eventually leads us directly to Skinwalker Ranch.
You notice these strange objects. These are not movie props. These are what we call forced process gyroscopic mechanisms. These were constructed in conjunction with a private, confidential technology endeavor testing gravitational physics theories.
Anti-gravity.
Correct.
I love how Greenstreet gets right down on the ground and try to look at, like, what is that? It looks like a bunch of motors and gyroscopes and nonsense to me, but what do I know? I'm not a physicist.
Fact.
So you had these constructed to test in an experiment with anti-gravity.
Correct. And what many believe to be the technology that would potentially drive or propel flying saucers.
Did you achieve anti-gravity?
We'll get to that.
Okay. Brandon sits me down and tells me that his path to buying Skinwalker Ranch started with a phone call in 1995 from one of his former Mormon missionary friends.
Yeah, and it should be noted that Joe Firmage, for whatever reason, was in Utah, I think, at the time. And that's where Brandon Fugel lives and his sort of real estate empire is.
And he said, Brandon, you're in the business of selling office buildings, correct? You're in the commercial real estate business. You work with companies. And I said, yeah, of course.
Fugel's friend told him he knew a successful business executive who was looking for office space and asked if Brandon could help.
And I, of course, jumped out of my chair. I remember I was so excited. And I said, absolutely, I can help. So he passed on the number to me. He says, well, his name is Joe Firmage.
Joe Firmage was a senior vice president at Novell, a software company in the 90s. He's also...
Yeah, and I just want to mention, my early work in IT revolved around Novell networking, of all things. I hated Novell networking so bad. Basically, Novell networking just remapped drives on every machine. And if you had more than 26 machines, remember one drive letter for each letter of the alphabet, it was a nightmare. But that's just a personal anecdote. I hated Novell. But he got rich with Novell networking.
A direct descendant of Mormon prophet Brigham Young. In 1995, during the dot-com bubble, he left Novell to become the founder of US Web, an interactive website design and consultancy company. Firmage needed office space for his new company. Brandon Fugel, a young real estate broker, provided that office space.
So there's where he connects with Brandon Fugel. And remember, all this is before Brandon Fugel was well known or the owner of Skinwalker Ranch. That wouldn't come until years later. So this whole story is kind of like the prequel to the Skinwalker Ranch story and how Brandon Fugel got involved with them, because many of the same people that pushed him or connected him to Bigelow were also involved with Joe Firmage.
US Web quickly became very successful, and Joe Firmage was the toast of Silicon Valley.
Yeah, how far the mighty have fallen, right? He has been heralded as the next Bill Gates. Now he just got arrested for scamming an 80-year-old woman out of money.
In 1998, Firmage appeared on the cover of Forbes magazine, deemed one of the masters of the new internet universe. Also on the cover was Jeff Bezos, the founder of Amazon. Joe Firmage and his company US Web were rising stars, destined for greatness.
Yeah, a lot of people don't remember this, but in the early 90s, when the World Wide Web was just starting, nobody knew how to make web pages, but every company in the world knew that they needed one. So essentially, Joe Firmage capitalized on that, creating basically a web design company, but this was ages before there was, hundreds of thousands of web design companies or things like Wix. You really needed somebody that knew what they were doing to build the web page for your company or your organization. He capitalized on that.
And then at the height of their success, when they're in the midst of merging with a big global PR firm agency, he does a story. Joe Firmage came out and said that, number one, in my spare time with my resources, I have learned that the UFO phenomena is real. Then he proceeds to say in this expose that he'd been visited by what he believed to be an alien being.
So there was the alien being hovering over his bed. And this is big news because he was a well-known Silicon Valley tech entrepreneur. And up until this point, he was very, very successful. And I think this paints a cautionary tale about what can happen to your life, to your business, to your marriage, to everything in your life when you get too far into this rabbit hole. There's some real dangers in the world of UFOs and aliens that are often overlooked. So basically, this guy tanks his whole career by coming out and saying he was abducted by aliens or he's having alien contact and UFOs are real and, I'm going to become the father of anti-gravity. Sound familiar? Like David Wilcock is being contacted by non-human entities, being told that he's going to be the father of anti-gravity. I guess the non-human entities can't really decide who to make the father of anti-gravity because so many people have claimed that they're going to do it and take money from people. Nobody ever does it. Just like free energy.
And that he was going to bring the truth forward. And that the physics to enable breakthrough propulsion, travel to the stars, and also free energy was within our...
Yeah, so listen to this. Firmage declares that it's now possible not only to understand how UFOs work, but also to emulate the technology. Does that sound familiar? Kind of like how TTSA claimed that they would emulate UFO technology and build a spaceship with a, quote, revolutionary power source that would change the world, and they collected millions too. And I get it. It's an enticing, it's kind of sexy, right? Like, oh, we're just going to copy the technology of UFOs and aliens. Well, first of all, nobody knows how these craft actually operate. People have theories, but isn't it interesting that so many different people in the UFO community basically have said the same thing? Oh no, we're going to learn how those UFO and alien spaceships work, and then we're going to copy them. Kind of like the ARV, remember that story? Alien reproduction vehicle. Well, we copied the aliens, right? And by the way, I believe that Mark McCandless story was largely fake, because he claimed that he, drew that blueprint down to the very last detail. Well, people have tried to, do exactly what Mark McCandless said, the copper plates and all this other stuff, and it didn't do anything. Didn't work. So non-working technology, but an awful lot of promises from many of these people.
Grasp.
Firmage's statements on aliens and UFOs caused a lot of embarrassment and controversy for US Web. He was removed as CEO and eventually left the company completely to hunt UFOs and experiment with the technology he believed an alien had given him.
Yeah, so isn't it interesting? He believed that an alien taught him the secrets of anti-gravity. Kind of like how David Wilcock believed that the Archangel Michael was teaching him secrets of technology and advanced propulsion systems and free energy.
Over 10 years later, in 2009, Brandon Fugal was standing in his private airport hangar. He was wondering why there had been no breakthrough aerospace technologies since the invention of the jet engine in 1937.
In the most fundamental ways that we propel and even power our world, we're still dealing with technology that is very old and antiquated. It bothered me, and I became obsessed.
And then he remembered Joe Firmage.
I remembered Joe Firmage and the fact that he'd done this interview and had claimed that...
Yeah, here we go. Cutting-edge physics will soon be able to prove the existence of UFOs and provide the technology to visit alien civilizations billions of light years away. These are not small promises, and this is essentially what he's promising people if you invest in his company that they're going to do. They're going to do cutting-edge physics that will soon be able to prove the existence of UFOs and provide technology to visit alien civilizations. Kind of like, I don't know, To the Stars Academy made similar promises, right? They were going to build a revolutionary craft with a revolutionary power source that would change the world.
He was going to be investing in physics programs. And I thought, well, maybe he has some insights.
Fugal says he contacted Firmage and had a meeting with him.
And I'm whisked into a garage where there are the equivalent of giant tinker toys. It looks like spinning objects, mechanical, very rudimentary.
Yeah, this sounds like a certain lab in New Jersey, right? That some of us may have heard about, but nothing that works, right? A lot of toys, but does any of this work? No, not yet.
Crude mechanical devices that are being operated, and I see an older, bearded Joe Firmage.
Fugal says Firmage claimed to be on the cusp of inventing humanity-changing anti-gravity technology that would allow humans to travel to the stars.
Again, huge promises. Huge promises.
He said, I believe that you've been led here for a reason. Right here in my garage before you, you are looking at the early proof of concept embodiments of the experiments showing the physics underpinning these new advancements.
Fugal says he was skeptical, but Firmage introduced Fugal to various people who would back up his claims.
He puts me on the phone with General Wesley Clark, former chairman of the Joint Chiefs.
Yeah, this is where it gets interesting. So Firmage was able to convince a 4-star general that his technology was real.
He introduces me to General Clark, says, General Clark, I'd like you to meet Brandon Fugal. He needs to know that there's reality to this. Would you mind telling him your views? And General Clark said, yes, I don't have any problem. Great to meet you. Mr. Fugal, I support Mr. Firmage. I've been following his work closely, and there's truth to it.
A representative for General Clark told me that while the general does not specifically remember this phone conversation with Fugal, he did indeed know Joe Firmage and was in fact interested in Firmage's claims of exotic technology.
So
well, that's pretty interesting right there.
I'm blown away. Here I have former chairman of the Joint Chiefs, head of NATO command, who's confirming that Joe has been involved with credible activities.
Yeah, and isn't it interesting? Because there's this argument from UFO supporters, believers, and proponents, there's got to be something to this because high-ranking government officials believe it. Well, here we see a perfect example of a very high-ranking government official who was fooled by pseudo-fake science.
Confirming that there's some reality.
Next, Firmage put Fugal on the phone with Hal Puthoff and Kit Green, two scientists who had previously worked with the CIA and had a long history of researching otherworldly topics like UFOs and psychic powers. They also vouched for Joe Firmage.
So isn't that interesting? Some of the people that would be involved with the TTSA techno scheme, Hal Puthoff is basically co-signing telling Brandon Fugel, oh no, this technology is real.
Wesley Clark, Hal Puthoff, Kit Green. So you had a series of phone calls.
Series of phone calls.
Puthoff and Green had long been involved with millionaire Robert Bigelow's hunt for the paranormal.
Isn't it interesting, the connections? It all goes back to the same core group of people over and over and over again. The SRI, psychic spies, the $22 million with Bigelow, Joe Firmage, Brandon Fugel. It's all the same group of people, friends.
And at the time of this phone call with Fugel in 2009, they were both involved in a now infamous $22 million Pentagon program headed by Bigelow. The program, among other things, allegedly investigated strange phenomena at Skinwalker Ranch, which at the time was owned by Robert Bigelow. Fugel's back-to-back phone conversations with General Clark, Hal Puthoff, and Kit Green, in which they all vouched for Joe Firmage and his endeavors.
By the way, we've showed a video previously of some sort of test being conducted, and Hal Puthoff and Brandon Fugel were there with Joe Firmage during these tests, and a bunch of other people, likely investors into the scheme.
Was enough to convince Fugel.
It completely changed my view of reality. It blew my mind.
Fugel converted his family's private airport hangar into a laboratory, a dedicated space where Firmage could experiment and build his world-changing technology. They created a company called Motion Sciences.
That's quite a leap of faith to go, I guess, based on the recommendations of these people that he thought were credible. And, you know, I get thinking that a four-star general is credible, but I don't understand him thinking Kit Green or Hal Puthoff were credible insofar as vouching for technology being real or not. Hal Puthoff has been involved in all kinds of pseudoscience nonsense, even to the point of being fooled by somebody using children's magic tricks into believing somebody had psychic powers. But that's a story for another time.
And Fugel claims he spent millions of dollars on Firmage's work. These 2010 videos on Joe Firmage's YouTube page show various tests of his invention. Fugel appears in a few of them.
What we're working with is
Yes, and so does Hal Puthoff.
advanced propulsion technology that truly has not been released as of yet. And this patented technology and physics breakthrough is going to change the world as we know it.
This video appears to show a celebratory demonstration of Firmage's device. A happy-looking Fugel stands next to Hal Puthoff.
There's Hal Puthoff and Brandon Fugel together. Again, all the same group of people involved in all of this shady stuff.
But the smiles and celebrations soon went away. Fugel says it soon became apparent that there was no truth to Firmage's claims.
Within months, it became apparent that Mr. Firmage had some serious issues. The unfortunate truth was that there wasn't any validity to it.
Fugel and Firmage had a falling out. Motion Sciences eventually ceased operations and closed down. In a statement to me, Firmage says...
Oh, 1 second, friends. Sorry about that. Just bear with me 1 moment. We'll get the statement from Firmage. 1 second. Let me just share my screen again. We're once again citing fair use, and then we'll move on to the next part of our presentation for this evening.
Sciences eventually ceased operations and closed down. In a statement to me, Firmage says that while his invention was showing great progress, its potential was not realized. He claims to have since continued to work on his device, which he now calls the accelerometer, and will reveal it to the world in 2023.
And by the way, it's 2024 now. He didn't reveal anything.
Firmage's devices from 10 years prior now sit on the bottom shelf of Fugel's sci-fi and fantasy movie collection.
It was disappointing and heartbreaking. And trust me, to lose that money, to lose years, to have the disappointment of family. At that point in time, I had lost a lot of faith and trust in people.
Fugel says this was a dark time for him.
Yeah, could you imagine investing millions of dollars and then finding out that it was all a fantasy of some guy that claimed to talk to aliens?
He struggled to trust anyone, and even his faith in the Mormon Church was shaken. But this all changed with a phone call in 2015.
And there's the phone call in which he gets hooked up with Robert Bigelow and purchases the Skinwalker Ranch. So I guess one big loss of money on paranormal nonsense wasn't enough for Brandon Fugel. But I am sure, however, that the purchase of Skinwalker Ranch and subsequent entertainment empire he has created out of a ranch full of nothing burgers has been much more financially successful. So good for him if he was just out for money and fame. Eventually he got it. But apparently he wasted millions of dollars on this, what can only be described as a techno scam. Joe Firmage claimed to have world-changing technology that would change the world, but under scrutiny, nothing worked. So we can get to some of the. It gets darker from here, friends. Tech entrepreneur sued for over $25 million lab project Ponzi scheme. Joe Firmage, an entrepreneur who claimed to have devised a new aerospace propulsion technology concept, allegedly ran a Ponzi scheme to solicit investments by misrepresenting that the project had been awarded federal contracts, according to a Utah federal lawsuit filed by his backers. Firmage and his three named co-defendants allegedly defrauded investors of $25 million, which they claim they sought for the stated purpose of financing the lab's operations until the government funds were ready to be dispersed. According to one complaint filed Wednesday in the Utah District Court of Utah. And unfortunately, I don't have a subscription to this, so that's about all I can show you from that. But I have more to share with you. It's interesting. We have mentioned Robert Schaefer from Bad UFOs, but another person that has covered this quite extensively is Jack Brewer from Expanding Frontiers Research. And again, I haven't placed them yet, but I will be placing these links in the description of the video right after the broadcast is concluded. Jack Brewer, this is from February of 2023, just over a year ago. And by the way, I just want to give a shout out to Jack Brewer and Erica Lukes from Expanding Frontiers Research, because they do work that nobody else is going to do. Jack went after some documents here. And this will shed an awful lot of light on this current situation. And by the way, we haven't even gotten to the criminal arrest yet. A 2017 transcript of an interview with former employee of the Joseph Firmage-operated Many One Corporation, conducted as part of an investigation launched by the Securities and Exchange Commission, tells a story of perpetual financial deficiency, questionable methods of managing capital, and off-the-cuff figures given to prospective investors. A transcript was obtained as part of a series of Freedom of Information Act requests filed with the SEC and FBI by Expanding Frontiers Research. This is why it's so important that researchers go out and try to get these documents. It's in the public's best interest to know about this stuff. Records were sought pertaining to corporations maintained by Firmage, known for his longtime antics within the UFO subculture and more recently, announcement as a candidate for president of the United States. He's running for president, too, among other wackadoo stuff. The name of the former Many One employee, who was accompanied by legal counsel during the interview, was held as exempt from disclosure under the FOIA. The witness indicated they worked for Many One approximately 18 months beginning in June 2012. The interviewer, whose name was also redacted, conducted the examination on behalf of the SEC Salt Lake Regional Office. A March 2018 post made at the apparent LinkedIn account of Joseph Firmage indicated the SEC informed him of investigation into Many One was completed and no enforcement action would be recommended. A subsequent FOIA request obtained the January 2018 no enforcement letter and confirmed the LinkedIn post to be correct. So the SEC investigated and decided to take no enforcement. And that's interesting considering the rest of the things that these FOIA documents obtained by Jack Brewer and Expanding Frontier Research sort of lay out. I don't understand how they didn't take enforcement action, but I'm not a law enforcement officer. I don't work for the SEC, so I apologize. Here it says, Many One was an LLC incorporated in 2011 and operated by Joseph Firmage. It was often thought to be working to develop internet technology in some capacity. A more accurate description, however, might point out Many One was part of a complex network of corporations, the purposes of which were somewhat ambiguous. And isn't it interesting? I had to file, start a company to file the LLC paperwork. I try to just make it ambiguous, make it like entrepreneurial. They won't let you. You have to define it. But some people somehow get away with it. It really depends on your state. My state is a stickler. You have to define for them exactly what the nature of your business is and whatever. This article by Mr. Brewer goes on to state, among the numerous companies was Many One Networks, incorporated in Delaware in January 2002. Another entity by the name of Many One Foundation was launched with Corporations Canada in August 2002. Directors included Joseph Firmage. Many One LLC was incorporated in Utah in 2011. So it's often the case with some of these shell games that they start multiple shell companies. Mr. Brewer says circular jargon was employed to not so clearly explain what kind of work was done at the many different companies, ultimately producing little that could be discerned about practical products or services. As one journalist put it in 1999, to listen to Firmage is to hear of the Kashmir effect and zero-point energy and Heisenberg's uncertainty principle and quantum foam and the Roswell incident and the MJ-12 documents, science, pseudoscience, truth and fiction, God and electromagnetism. It's all there, a thick and pungent stew. The 1999 observation refers to tendencies Firmage had to discuss his Mormon upbringing and belief in UFO-friendly narratives. He claimed openly to believe he encountered what might be described as a non-human intelligence. The book Firmage wrote, titled Truth, informs readers of his related philosophies and an awe-inspiring future in which humankind knows a cosmic intelligence, a future he declared was upon us over 20 years ago. While Joseph Firmage often uses words to invoke Arthur C. Clarke-like imagery among those who will listen, the FOIA process reflects a much less mystical chain of events. Records obtained from the FBI demonstrate its San Jose office interviewed at least one, possibly two, Many One Networks employees in December 2008 and January 2009. The heavily redacted records provided below withhold the names of the individuals interviewed and do not clarify the nature of the FBI inquiries. So the FBI is investigating. Firmage had his sights set on a number of rather sensational projects, or at least purported to repeatedly believe grandiose outcomes were obtainable, and bounced from one company and idea to another. What moving parts could be identified often overlapped from one instance to the next. This is further reflected in the statements of interviewee examined by the SEC, who referenced Firmage concerns such as Academy of Science and Arts and Motion Sciences. So isn't it interesting, To the Stars Academy of Arts and Science? This was done first by Joe Firmage with the Academy of Science and Arts. And notice how Hal Puthoff has been involved in both of those things, both of which allegedly scammed investors out of millions of dollars. These ventures are typically perceived to have been busts pertaining to anti-gravity research and related subject matter. Nonetheless, Firmage numbers among those in UFO circles who boastfully cite decades of work on projects framed as impressive, though little can be found of anything particularly relevant was actually achieved. Then there's another company that he formed. So isn't it interesting? He's forming all of these companies, right? And here we see the Kiviat lawsuit again. As people would be brought in for employment, the witness explained to the SEC, Redacted would often offer huge salaries of over $100,000 for tasks and skills that traditionally paid much less than that. So they were over-promising and under-delivered. Did those people get paid? No, not consistently. The witness described a plan undertaken to sell domain names, which would be elevated to the first 3 pages of any internet search engine. This reportedly linked to a huge computer program, presumably related to one of Firmage's web ventures and involving the ongoing purchase of a rather enormous number of domains. They did not sell domain names, the witness explained. He bought them, and he bought them throughout his lifetime. From the time he left US Web, he had been purchasing these internet domain names. I think it was probably close to tens of thousands of internet domain names. Anybody that's ever had to register a .com, you know how frustrating it is? These guys buy up all these short domain names, and then they try to sell them for tens of thousands of dollars. That's how that works. The client would purchase a package that would have their business connected into a network of domain names. The service somewhat worked for a while, the witness added, but it was difficult to sustain. Pardon me. You'd purchase them for a year at a time, so those were always coming due in big blocks of domain names, and the funding for those at a minimum was $10 per domain name. And so we would limp along and be okay, and then it would require a huge amount of funds to re-register or keep the ownership of those domain names. So this sounds like another kind of a scam or a scheme in which it's not sustainable, right? And here is a screenshot from Brandon Fugel, owner of Skinwalker Ranch, who says, I was the one who organized this, provided the initial funding, and ultimately disproved it, shutting it down 3 years later. I became quite skeptical of any claims regarding these topics. The court claimed the rectification of co-moving angular momentum utilizing certain devices. The witness told SEC they personally kept notes on investors as well. This is where it gets creepy. The witness told the SEC they personally kept notes on investors as well as composed what were termed intelligence summaries, which were described as background checks on persons or entities that might involve surveillance in addition to general research. They specifically mentioned motion scientists in this capacity, allowing the partners in Provo, Utah, to take over the company. Notes were kept by the witness on who invested funds in, again, Academy of Science and Arts, but not the amounts, even though the witness was not employed with them, but a different corporation. Many won, at least in theory. In actuality, they were rarely paid, and this was described as the norm, even though Firmage reportedly made big promises in order to get people on board. Afterwards, the witness indicated an employee might be assigned more of a title to impress potential investors than fill any prestigious executive position. They might also be urged to sell products that were not yet functionally complete. Again, that's shady and scammy, allegedly. Something the witness claimed that they personally refused to do. Investors were remarkably promised 40 times the amount of funding in return. So listen, anytime anybody asks you to invest in something and says you're going to get 40 times your money back, you should run. Don't get out your checkbook, but instead run away. To the best of the witness's knowledge, these returns were never paid. When new investors were secured, minimal payments would be made to the squeakiest wheels, so to speak, chronically creating more wheels in need of oil. I did find out that Redacted was using those funds to repay people who had previously loaned him money. This is the textbook definition of a Ponzi scheme. You get money from initial investors. When they start getting antsy and wanting some return on their money, you get new investors and pay them out of the new investors' money. That, my friends, is the textbook definition of a Ponzi scheme. I would be told for operational purposes that we had funding coming and a certain amount of funding. And I was told to let everybody know that funding was coming. The witness would get on the phone and say funding was on the way, only for it to eventually be significantly less than promised. There was never enough money to pay employees and support personnel that was committed to them. A couple of specific redacted and prioritized investors were believed to have made millions. or at least hundreds of thousands of dollars over the years. The two were reportedly referred to as loan sharks, but many one leadership expressed it went to where they needed to get the funding. Sometimes investments would be in small increments, such as $10,000 or $20,000. People involved would then receive $500 or $1,000 apiece, usually less. When larger amounts were obtained, say $30,000, about half would be gone right off the top, presumably to former investors and bills deemed mandatory. So there we have the construction of a Ponzi scheme. They were taking money from new investors to pay off old investors and old debts. Payments to those owed were often made in cash, explaining why that was the case. The witness indicated the investments arrived in cash. Also, people who were owed money refused to accept checks. Certain payments made by checks, such as a property lease, would frequently bounce. The witness indicated prospects were pitched ideas for investments, often along with creative urgency that suggested many either needed to get over the next hurdle or it was a particularly critical point in its research. I do know that Redacted often discussed the amount of money that would be made and provided facts and figures off the top of its head. It was stated a lot of potential investors walked away because there was nothing committed in writing. Asked in closing if there was anything the witness wanted to add that they were not asked about, they explained they had knowledge of people who were going to align their business with, again, Academy of Arts and Science, and suffered tremendous financial losses because of this. Due to one particular company out of Denmark, the witness could never look at Redacted the same way because of the things he promised them. These were just people who believed in what Redacted promised. He promised to buy their company at a huge profit, and I think he might have made one payment towards that and agreed, and the agreed to funds never came, and they had banked everything on that. So that's some of the excellent reporting of Mr. Brewer over at Expanding Frontiers Research. Again, we'll add that to the description of the video. We want to take a moment to thank a kind and generous benefactor. Says, great show. Reminds me a bit of Richard Dawkins and Christopher Hitchens. I wonder what the grifters will do this year when nothing happens again. Well, no, it's all real again because Anna Paulina Luna saw a video of alien bodies. So Grush must be telling the truth, right? Thank you for your kindness, generosity, and support. For those unaware, we read every single super chat and thank every person supporting our show. Thank you, Lord Jamington, for your kindness, generosity, and support with your 10-pound note. We appreciate you. Thanks for appreciating us. And thank you for helping us to praise the cash.
Praise the cash, praise the cash, praise the cash.
All right. I've got another article from Mr. Brewer to share. And then, of course, we have to get into the latest, the criminal charges that have been filed against Mr. Firmage. I was quite surprised about this today because, quite honestly, I've become very, very cynical about any of these techno scam people ever being held accountable for their scamming people. When are the people involved in TTSA going to at least answer some questions? What happened to the millions of dollars that investors were all allegedly scammed out of? Where's the millions of dollars, Lou Elizondo? Where's the millions of dollars, Tom DeLong? Where's the millions of dollars, Hal Putoff? Where's the millions of dollars, Lou Elizondo? Christopher Mellon? What did you guys do with those millions of dollars? Why didn't any investors make any of their money back? Why was nobody prosecuted? Somebody should be asking the SEC these hard questions. And by the way, I'm going to do that. So we'll have some sort of follow-up to this. Maybe we'll start a whole techno scam series because these people are all connected. Hal Putoff was directly involved in all this Joe Firmage shit, allegedly. All right. Boy, it gets better and better, friends. It gets better and better. And God bless Jack Brewer and Erica Lukes from Expanding Frontiers Research because they do this work. And quite honestly, I think they're kind of unsung heroes and people don't understand the importance of the work that they do until something like this happens. And you can go back to work they did. And there's the whole background of Joe Firmage and these shady business dealings is right on their website, expandingfrontiersresearch.org. SEC witness, many one, went through $59 million. The securities, so listen, as far as shady alleged techno scams, Joe Firmage did so much better than TTSA. But isn't it interesting that people sort of copied the whole, in my opinion, allegedly, people copied the way that Joe Firmage did his techno scam, and they did something similar, promising similar things like world-changing technology. We've saw TTSA do it. We've saw David Wilcock do it. There's been other people in the UFO community that have done it, including Stephen Greer promising everybody a free energy device or space technology. Other people, including Billy Carson, promising people space technology if they invest with him. It all goes back to Joe Firmage. He is the originator of, I think this is where, it's like these guys are so unoriginal, and they just see somebody scamming and making a lot of money with their scam, and they go, you know what, we'll do that alleged scam too. We'll try that. But nobody has been more successful, because apparently Joe Firmage was able to go through $59 million on what? What do you spend $59 million? Let's get into this. In the recently revealed interview, a witness who described themselves as an investor and advisor repeatedly told the SEC of some $59 million reportedly gone through by many one. Now, remember, the SEC decided not to take any action here. How do you have a witness saying they blew through $59 million of investors' money and you as the SEC don't do anything? Welcome to our broken, decrepit system of government here. It's amazing. And by the way, if the SEC had done their job and criminally prosecuted Mr. Firmage, in my opinion, he would not have been able to defraud this old lady. We're still going to get to that, the criminal charges, right? 59 million reportedly gone through by many one. The witness indicated he interpreted the company had interests in internet services and, quote, focusing on a spaceship, unquote. In the second of the newly discovered interviews that were scheduled, the SEC documented how a witness whose name is redacted failed to show up to a 2016 interview. When the SEC promptly contacted them by phone, the person claiming they had just experienced a massive sewer line break and everything was flooded in their house, adding that the mishap was reported and a work crew was on his way. However, SEC investigation revealed no such situations were detected or reported to local authorities as described by the witness, either at the address in question or elsewhere in the Water District. So the SEC wants to interview somebody at Joe Firmage's company. These names are redacted, but it could indeed be Mr. Firmage. And suddenly there's a sewer line break and there's shit everywhere and I can't talk to the SEC. There's shit everywhere. A work crew's on the way. They're going to clean the shit out of my house and fix this. I can't do the interview. There's shit everywhere. Well, it turns out that was just an excuse by somebody who did not want to be interviewed by the Securities and Exchange Commission about these issues. Joseph Firmage did not respond to multiple attempts to discuss the records obtained and provide him opportunities to comment for potential inclusion in this series of blog posts. As previously reported, records obtained thus far from the SEC include a 2017 interview conducted with a former employee, a company known in the UFO subculture as having solicited investors to purportedly create an anti-gravity device. A relatively well-known cast of characters, including Ron Pandolfi, Brandon Fugel, and Hal Puthoff, are associated with the saga. The witness interviewed by the SEC described overcommitting on investment returns, quoting figures off the cuff, and failing to pay bills and investors as many one standard operations. The elusive anti-gravity device was never produced. Kind of like how the TTSA spaceship was never produced by Lou Elizondo. Or for all we know, maybe Lou Elizondo has that spaceship in his backyard and he's just keeping it to himself. But I think he should have to answer to the Securities and Exchange Commission, where's the spaceship that he promised? Expanding Frontiers Research submitted a FOIA appeal after receiving records from the SEC. The appeal sought further release of redacted information along with previously withheld records. And I just want to say this, Jack Brewer is amazing at forcing people to give him information that is private, or, you know, I'm sure that Firmage and his investors and all the people involved don't want people getting these records. And a lot of times they will initially deny you those records. I learned from two people. I learned from John from the Black Vault and from Mr. Brewer. You always file the appeal. Be aggressive and let them know that you're not going to stop and you want those records. So good for them. Examples of material further below. Before the appeal on the left, after the appeal. So this whole thing was redacted, and Mr. Brewer fought with them to get less redactions. With Joe Firmage, who was the CEO of the Academy of Science and Arts, how we were going to spend that money and how we were going to pay those people. And so so there you go. So that's interesting. Oh, now I just borked my, my share. 1 second. Let me go back here. One second. Of course, I lose that for expanding it. I don't know how that happened. Okay, so 1 second. Let me just get it back here, and we'll do the share again. Shout out to Jack Brewer of expandingfrontiersresearch.org. All right. So interestingly, this is why you always file appeals. You force them. We wouldn't even have known Joe Firmage was named here. They were redacting everything. Look at all these redactions. Mr. Brewer fought with them and filed appeals to have some of the redactions removed, and they were. Records newly obtained include dozens of pages of another 2017 interview with a redacted witness who told the SEC they first heard about Many One from the owner of a gym. The gym owner told them they invested in the venture, hoped the witness would look into it for them, and suggested they might choose to invest as well. The witness proceeded to invest in Many One, but explained they've become increasingly reluctant to release additional funding due to a concern about the company's failure to produce financial records as requested. By the way, just so to educate everybody, if you're an investor in a company, you have the absolute right to ask for financial records, all of them, any of them. And there's a lot of interesting stories about people buying one share so that they could get to a company's records. You can do that. What was it the witness wanted? I wanted to see all the financial information in the past. I wanted to see the debt, all the debt that was, because it was very nebulous who invested what, who owned what, and what they were told when they bought their investment. That's what I want to know, the SEC interviewer interjected. I know you do, the witness replied. I wanted to know it too. Circumstances described by the witness include testimony of sympathy felt for Many One personnel, unaccounted for tens of thousands of dollars, and investors believed to have gone to prison for how they originally obtained funds they gave Many One. The witness ultimately grew intolerant that Many One personnel could not or would not account for expenses. He made it clear they were to only allocate funds to items he approved under certain conditions as agreed. His expectations were not met. The witness described one individual who believed invested and lost $1 million in Firmage's corporation. He spent his entire estate putting money into Many One. The witness indicated he believed some $20 million was invested in Many One. This is before it filed bankruptcy and reformed as Many One LLC. At one point thereafter, he reportedly could account for $59 million that had gone out the door. The witness told the interviewer he never recovered his investment. To the best of his knowledge, the gym owner lost his membership as well. Of course, included in this is the SEC response to the FOIA request. So that's interesting. Mr. Firmage apparently blew through how do you blow through $59 million building a bunch of Tinker Toy nonsense fake UFO engines? I don't know. Do you know? Let me know. I could use $59 million. I got some space in my garage. I'll build some Tinker Toy bullshit too. I could use some money. Maybe I'll be the father of anti-gravity. All right. So this brings us fairly up to date. For some of the past shady, scammy things that Mr. Firmage has been involved in. And isn't it interesting that so many people who we're well aware of, it's so interesting to me that Skinwalker Ranch, Hal Puthoff, Eric Davis, who works for Hal Puthoff, that's all these people are connected to all of these shady business dealings. And it's all the same core group of people. Isn't that interesting? Where have we heard that before? So this last thing that I have to share with you, and then we'll move on to viewer questions and comments. Utah entrepreneur facing federal lawsuit is charged with financially exploiting an 80-year-old woman. Salt Lake City, Utah, a Utah entrepreneur, that would be Joe Firmage, currently facing a federal civil lawsuit accusing him of running a Ponzi scheme, is also facing criminal charges after police say he took an elderly woman's money and he left her in a house with no running water or utilities because he didn't pay her bills. Earlier this month, a judge ordered Joseph Paramore Firmage, 53, of Salt Lake City, to stand trial on charges of financial exploitation of a vulnerable adult, a third-degree felony, and intentional abuse or neglect of a vulnerable adult, a Class A misdemeanor. He's scheduled to be in court again on March 15th. And, I just want to take a moment to say that this is why one of the reasons that I, report the way that I do. And some of these people out there in the UFO community that will defend anything as long as the person's, going along with their program, this is the harm it causes. An 80-year-old woman was left in a home by Joe Firmage with no running water, no power. It's somebody's mother, it's somebody's grandmother, it's somebody's sister, somebody's friend, somebody's neighbor. And this scumbag allegedly took advantage of this woman. He's going to have his day in court, and we're going to report on that as well. Firmage, who is listed on his LinkedIn page, is the founder and chairman of Science Invents. You notice how he has endless companies? Like one goes belly up, he just starts another one and starts looking for investors again. How do you do that? Like, how do you have one company that blows through $59 million and you never do anything you promise? How do you go from that to just like, we'll just start a new corporation and get new investors? Like, how does this work? Why is this guy already in prison? Firmage, who is listed on his LinkedIn page as the founder and chairman of Science Invents, is also currently facing a federal lawsuit accusing him of running a Ponzi scheme to solicit investments by misrepresenting what he and his associates had been awarded federal contracts after allegedly devising a new aerospace propulsion technology concept. In June 2023, a social worker with Adult Protective Services called police after performing a welfare check on an 80-year-old woman who lives on Salt Lake City's east side near the University of Utah. The social worker discovered that the woman had lost a substantial amount of weight after already being of small frame, that her caretaker, Firmage, had canceled her cell phone service and cut her landline, that none of her Social Security checks have been deposited for several months, and that the woman had attempted to apply for a loan on her home, which she owned free and clear of any mortgage or lien, according to charging documents. Firmage had control of the woman's finances and was supposed to be paying her bills, police learned. But when officers went to her home, they detected the smell of raw sewage as a result of there being no running water in the home. It was later discovered that the water was shut off for lack of payment due to Firmage not paying the utility bills, the charges state. A family member told investigators that the woman can only call relatives using Firmage's phone, and that when she calls, she was always on speakerphone and can hear Firmage yelling. She explained that Firmage has been isolating the woman from her family, according to the charges. When police conducted a follow-up check on the woman in August, they noted that she appeared very thin, her property taxes had still not been paid, and there was also little food in the kitchen and 2 jugs of water. Police discovered that the water still had not been turned back on, the charges state. Police again questioned Firmage, who became agitated and told them that he had several business endeavors and expected to receive $200 million from the federal government, and that he was moving to Washington, D.C. to run for president. Firmage also provided several business names of companies he claimed to own, but they either did not exist or were expired for several years, the charges allege. So here's where the facade built by a con artist, alleged con artist, starts crashing down. Oh, no, I own all these companies. I'm getting $200 million from the federal government. Sure you are. None of that is true. And, you know, if he's telling police that, what's he telling potential investors? A search warrant affidavit served during the investigation further states that Joseph Firmage is currently unemployed, but as stated, he is running for president of the United States of America. And he is closing a business deal with the Department of Defense and will be paid over $100 million from the Federal Reserve. Joseph Firmage has made many statements that he'll have the money soon to pay all the past due bills. But by August 30th, police learned that the woman's gas and electricity had been shut off and her local church was helping her pay those bills, according to the charges. Firmage was arrested on August 30th on warrants. At the jail, it was discovered that Firmage had 4 credit cards with the woman's name on them. Doesn't look good for him. He had 4 credit cards with this 80-year-old woman's name. He's taking her Social Security checks, and he's not paying any of her bills. Great, allegedly. A search of this vehicle also discovered the woman's mail, including past due bills and a check from her bank account for $10,000. Charging documents state, during a welfare check on September 28th, the woman told police that her dogs would be going away soon, then clarifying that they would be living at the White House, the charges state. It was confirmed that there was no food in the residence. So this guy's supposed to be her caretaker. He's taken her cell phone, isolating her from her family, allegedly, and there's no food in her house, allegedly. During a welfare check, so over the course of the investigation, it was discovered that Firmage represented that he cares for the woman's food, utility bills, gives her rides, monitors her phone calls, and controlled her family's access to her. Firmage stated on several occasions that he would pay the past due bills and had access and control of her finance. Firmage also took out loans in her name, attempted to refinance her home, and have the funds rerouted to his then boyfriend, the charges state. However, Firmage failed to pay the utility bills despite repeated statements that he would the next day, leading to the woman's water, gas, and electricity being shut off. The resident smelled of raw sewage, and the conditions of the residence left her without proper access to water, electricity, and heat. Further, the defendant failed to provide sufficient food for the woman and also isolated her from communicating freely with relatives. The warrant further states that the woman told investigators that she does not know where the retirement benefits are going and that she has numerous judgments against her from a business venture Joseph Firmage started under her name and multiple signature loans with her financial institution. She has stated on numerous occasions that she has never had financial issues until the past few years, and she does not seem to understand how or why any of this is happening. Firmage's attorney declined comment on Tuesday. Firmage made a name for himself in the 1990s by founding Sirius Corporation in Salt Lake City at age 17, selling computer programming tools. Novell acquired the company in 1993 for an estimated $24 million. He later co-founded US Web, which merged with CKS Group, an internet marketing and business company, to form a company that at one time had an estimated $260 million in annual revenues. In 2022, Firmage announced that he is running for president. So there we have it. It's absolutely despicable what this guy did to this old lady, allegedly. I believe that he's welcome to have his day in court. But this right here is what I'm going to point to when anybody defends alleged UFO scammers. If you're scamming people for UFO dollars, you're not going to stop when you're done with that. You're going to scam anybody, allegedly. Sorry to keep using that term. We have to cover our bases here. So, I'm just completely and totally disgusted that this is the world that we live in. Like, I don't know, maybe I just have a soft heart, or I have too highly developed form of conscience that would bother me if I took advantage of an old lady or anybody, really. It's kind of ridiculous. And what happened to this guy's money? What is he doing with all this? The one company, we saw the details. A witness claimed that they went through $59 million. I mean, I guess you could go through millions of dollars trying to prove your batshit fake theories are real when they're not. I guess just keep hiring people to try to build anti-gravity engines to the tune of 59 million. I don't know. It's just like, yeah, Kimmy77 says, sounds like some serious love and light. Yeah, definitely does. So we'll take our fair use banner. I'll be answering comments and questions from the live chat, reading any additional super chats. Remember, we read every single one. And if you become a YouTube channel member during our live broadcast, we'll give you a shout out and a thank you. We appreciate all the new subscribers lately. We appreciate all of you. Thanks for being here. So comments and questions for me, please put them in all capital letters. I happen to be visually impaired, and this really does help. I think one of the big takeaways from this is that To the Stars Academy was nothing new. They basically, allegedly, or possibly, I agree this is speculation, just copied Joe Firmage's model. Just promise people alien technology. You're going to crack the code of anti-gravity. You'll collect a lot of money. And they sure did. By the way, I did reach out to a government source who told me that they would help me navigate getting questions answered by the SEC, both about Joe Firmage's alleged techno scams and about the TTSA alleged techno scams. Apparently, they know someone over at the SEC who is in charge of media requests or interacting with the media, and we're going to start getting some answers. We're going to listen. If your job is to prevent investment scams from happening, you should be looking at Joe Firmage's shady business dealings, alleged shady business dealings, and you should be looking at the alleged shady business dealings of TTSA, who promised people a spaceship, kind of like how Joe Firmage promised people an anti-gravity engine that you could build a spaceship with, right? And Hal Putoff was involved in all of this. Great. High Speed Chase with a kind and generous $5 super chat. Thank you for being a member, who simply says, thanks. Well, thank you for your kindness, generosity, and support. We appreciate you. And thank you for appreciating us. And, of course, for helping us to praise the cash. I can't be scamming 80-year-old ladies. I got to do this the honest way. We're a viewer-supported show. We read every single super chat, so get them in.
Raise the cash, raise the cash, raise the cash.
All right. We'll take some comments and questions from me. Please put them in all capital letters. Will they make Firmage pay that lady back? They'll seize his assets or something. They're not going to let him just walk away with this lady's money. And compared to the $59 million that he allegedly defrauded from investors for previous alleged scams, this is probably only, 20, 30, 40, maybe $100,000. So it's small on the list. But, the one good news here is that people don't like it when you scam an old lady, because everybody has an old lady, I shouldn't say that, older woman in their family or friend circle that they love and care about. And when you hear this story, at least for me, the first thing my mind goes to is, what if somebody was scamming my old, Aunt Ida like this, or whoever is in my life? Most of my older relatives have passed on. I do have one aunt who is the brother of a great aunt who is her brother was my grandfather, and she's still with us. I think she's over 90. God bless her. But most of my older relatives, including my parents, grandparents, have all passed away. Most of my great aunts are gone. But there's still somebody that in your family that's an elderly. I have a mother-in-law. I can just think about it like that. Like, what if somebody scams my mother-in-law like that? So I guess the good news is that he done allegedly scammed too much at this point. Like, now listen, if you want to scam a bunch of UFO wackadoos, go for it. We won't prosecute you. And we've seen that. How the hell did this guy generate $59 million in investment capital to build a fake anti-gravity engine, and he never ended up in prison, right? But you scam an old lady, and suddenly you're getting prosecuted. I can't wait to talk to the SEC, both about Joe Firmage and why there was no prosecution there, Because, like, think about it. If he was in jail from the previous scams, he would have been in jail. He wouldn't have been able to scam this old lady. And of course, I can't wait to ask the SEC about the alleged TTSA techno scam. I want the numbers too. I want the SEC or somebody tell me how much money did Hal Putoff make? How much money did to Tom DeLonge make? We do know that he paid his sister over, I think it was over $100,000, to be the media person, and she never would answer emails. So what are you paying her $100,000 for? Allegedly, I don't know. I know I sent an awful lot of emails to her when TTSA was going. Couldn't get one question answered, but they were paying her $100,000 to be their media person and public relations person. How does that work? How much money did Lou Elizondo get from the TTSA thing? And yeah, by the way, interestingly, this Kurt from Theories of Everything just tweeted today asking people what they want to see this year on his show. And, I'm not pulling any punches anymore. Kurt from Theories of Everything has possibly made more money. I haven't done all the numbers, but it looks to me like he made an awful lot of money, interviewing Lou Elizondo, but it's the TTSA circle jerk. And my point is, don't do the circle jerk. Don't take the interview unless you're going to ask the hard questions. So I wrote, I'd like you to actually do the real job interviewing people and asking hard questions instead of doing the softball circle jerk just so that you can make money. Don't take the interviews unless you are prepared to ask the hard questions. And I stand by the video that I made. Nobody should be interviewing Lou Elizondo, especially considering this, right? Especially considering this. No one should ever interview Lou Elizondo without asking him about the Joe Firmage alleged techno scams, about the alleged TTSA techno scam, about Hal Putoff's place or, role in both of those things. How much money did Hal Putoff get from any of this Joe Firmage stuff, if anything? And by the way, I'm not making accusations. I'm just asking questions here. How much money did Lou Elizondo get from TTSA? You can't interview him, especially given these new revelations about Joe Firmage and how there's a direct connection between Joe Firmage's alleged techno scams and the alleged TTSA techno scam in the form of Hal Putoff being somewhat directly involved in both. People have to ask these hard questions. And if you're not willing to ask these hard questions, don't take the interview and think you're just going to circle jerk your way to a bunch of money and nobody's going to say anything. I'm going to say something. And that's where we're at. And that's where we find ourselves. Amy Collins says, millionaires and billionaires scamming each other. Poof. But when they scam the vulnerable, it makes me grind my teeth in anger. Yeah. This is funny. If he would have just stuck to the techno scam, apparently the SEC wasn't going to prosecute him for anything, right? So that's pretty interesting, right? Scamming UFO dorks won't get much. They are mostly broke. Well, Wilcock is anyway. Yeah. Oh, by the way, apparently David Wilcock is doing a new live stream this Saturday. So I'm pretty sure I know what our show Monday is going to be. A lot of people have been asking me for a new episode of The Wacky World of Wilcock, but I can't do that without help and assistance from the wacky man Wilcock himself. So if he does a new stream on Saturday, but Sunday night or Monday night, I will cover it here. And thanks for your support. Glenn Frith is here. They should be looking at Wilcock and all of the rest. Yeah, I think there should be a special part of the government, sort of like the UFO and alien scammer police, because we've got Linda Hale out there telling people this picture from a video game is a real picture of an alien. Get behind my paywall. That should be criminally prosecuted. That should be criminally prosecuted, in my opinion. We've got David Wilcock telling people take baths in your own piss and you'll get superpowers. And I got superpowers because the Archangel Michael told me to take baths in my own piss and buy my $333 course and you'll get superpowers too. In my opinion, that should be looked into, investigated, and perhaps possibly criminally prosecuted. But, you know, again, I'm not a law enforcement officer and I'm not a lawyer, so I don't know why these guys keep getting away with it. But look at this Joe Firmage situation. If you let these guys get away with scamming people, they just keep doing it. How many shady things has Wilcock been involved in? There was the Pete Peterson GoFundMe scam. There was the Emery Smith PayPal donation scam. There was the Convergence Pictures LLC invest in my film company scam. And more and more and more. If they let them get away with it one time, they do it again, right? Look at what about Stephen Greer with his free energy alleged scam? Allegedly, he collected $500,000 and promised everybody a free energy device, never produced anything. Then he collected, allegedly, another $500,000 to make a film about free energy. Stephen Greer has allegedly collected $1 million for free energy stuff. And all he's produced is a shitty film, right? Never produced the devices he promised. Somebody in the government should be looking into these things. Steve Long is here. Welcome, Steve Long. Says, anti-gravity with Firmage, SafeMoon, NFTs, Skinwalker Ranch. Fugel is either the stupidest dupe on earth or he has been knowingly involved with multiple frauds. Allegedly. Steve Long's going to get me in trouble. Wait. The views expressed by the members of the live chat do not necessarily reflect those of the producers of tonight's broadcast. Thank you, Steve Long. I can't say I disagree, really, though, right? Smith, thanks for being a member, says, unfortunately, adversarial journalism died off in the mainstream a long time ago. Won't hold my breath for lazy PhD guys to uphold the banner. Well, I believe that good journalism should be adversarial when it needs to be. You know, if you've got somebody with an incredibly shady past like Lou Elizondo, who's made all kinds of false claims in the public, discourse or the public media, then you need to ask him hard questions about that. You don't just get to circle jerk him off and hear his thoughts about what if aliens are discovered? What will that mean to humanity for 2 hours and take the money? Good journalism should be adversarial, especially investigative journalism should be adversarial. We try to uphold that here. Lou Reviews is here, just popping in. Who's scamming who today? Who's allegedly scamming who? Allegedly. Lou Reviews. And again, the views expressed by members of the live chat do not necessarily reflect those of the producers of this broadcast. But Lou Reviews, this is a great story because this guy, Joe Firmage, just was scamming UFO dorks for years, and everybody was allegedly, and the government just let him. There was SEC investigations, and they didn't prosecute or anything. Now he's scamming old ladies out of their Social Security checks. And I'm sorry, I hate to laugh because that's a tragedy. Like, but if you get to the level of Scamville where you're like, well, I allegedly collected $59 million for my fake anti-gravity device, including getting a few $1 million in a free lab from that idiot Brandon Fugel who sees Skinwalker Ranch as a real paranormal thing. But you know what? The money ran out. Now I'm going to just have to just allegedly scam old ladies out of their Social Security money, right? And you see this? We detailed it all tonight. He's taking out loans in that old lady's name. He's applying for credit cards. How scummy can the UFO community get? The world may never know. Wise Monkey is here and says, if I wear a ghillie suit and do it quietly, that's the 5 observables covered. I'll allow it, right? I will definitely allow it. Yeah, so this is an unfortunate story, but I think, it really does show you that the UFO world is filled with, I always say this, the UFO world is filled with con artists, liars, scammers, grifters, UFO profiteering whores, and literal criminals. And those are just the good guys. It is an incredibly shady world, and the fact that some people won't even acknowledge that shows you that they live in a delusional fantasy world. There is an official scam tax added to all wolfology. Could be, yeah. So we're gonna bounce on out of here. I don't believe there will be a live show tomorrow night at 9 p.m. There is a replay at 9 p.m. I'm relaunching this Murder in UFO Land series. Tomorrow night is one of the best videos I ever produced. And you know what? Nobody cared when I originally produced. Well, some people did, but not nearly as much. And, you know, sometimes when you're spending like months working on one video or one story, you think, oh, this is going to get this many views and this is going to get huge views. I'm always wrong. But we've gotten more compliments from the show that I'm airing tomorrow night at 9 p.m. than any other show for good investigative journalism. And this is called Murder in UFO Land, the Christopher Gray story. So we're relaunching the Murder in UFO Land series. Next week, we'll be debuting episode 3. But I've got 2 in the can, so we're going to sort of relaunch those, remind people of those. Tomorrow night at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, we'll be broadcasting this first episode, Murder in UFO Land, Part 1, the Christopher Gray story. And oh boy, is this one a great story. And it involves the Bledsoes, and it involves an awful lot of UFO celebrities that were literally emailed somebody being murdered on a live stream. And nobody wants to talk about it. In fact, people were threatened in the UFO community. Don't talk about this story. Why? It's bad for business. That's what people said. They didn't want anybody to know about this guy who got so far down the rabbit hole that he murdered his own father, stabbed him to death. We're bringing the whole story tomorrow night at 9 p.m. Eastern Time. Now, we'll be going to the cabin, so I may not be there right at 9 p.m., but eventually, maybe 9:30, I don't know. Sometimes I get there in time. I'll be in the live chat, and I hope you will be too. And then Saturday night as well, we have episode 2, which was an equally disturbing story. Let me just share to promote that. That is this Saturday night at 9 p.m. Eastern, Murder in UFO Land Part 2, David Icke, Matthew Coleman, and the murder of 2 children. This one's really tragic, sad one, but I wanted to include it in the series to show you just how damaging UFOs and aliens can be, especially to people who are not very stable. And we all know some people in the UFO community who are not very stable individuals. And again, we'll be continuing this series. Next week, I've got episode 3, and I'm pre-producing episode 4 right now. And yeah, that many people have gotten too far down the rabbit hole and murdered somebody. And I think this is important information to bring to the public. We try to be a public benefit here. Billy Hicks says, not surprised at all Firmage had a boyfriend. Wilcock likes to... I can't read this. Billy Hicks. I can't say I disagree with you. Right? Oh, I'm going to read it. Not surprised at all Firmage had a boyfriend. Wilcox likes the cocks too, no doubt. Laugh out loud. Well, yeah, but not that there's anything wrong with that, right? Yeah. Operation Shutdown is here and says, we know people in the UFO community who are not stable individuals. Yeah, I agree. Absolutely. Yeah. So listen, we're going to bounce on out of here. We're going to be ending tonight's broadcast after the crawl out here with a brand new music video from Simon Fly. I think you're going to like this one. I'm looking forward. I can't tell you how happy I am because it's going to be 50 at the cabin this weekend. It's the end of February. Oh, by the way, I had a Mandela effect yesterday. I'll tell you about it. It was February 28th, yesterday. And I go, oh my God, it's the last day of the month. And I didn't do the Patreon and the members only journal video yet. I got to do that. And I remembered thinking to myself, yeah, February is always such a short month because February only has 28 days. And I made the video. I uploaded it, by the way. If you want to see it, you're a channel member or Patreon supporter. It's there. And then the next day I look at the calendar and I go, wait a minute, it's February 29th? And then I go, no, it can't be February 29th because February only has 28 days. I'm sure of it. You know, like, it was a leap year this year. So I'm not mentally ill or insane. I did correctly remember that February usually only has 28 days. But on a leap year, February has 29 days. And that's what happened this year. But the good news is, for once in my life, I got the Patreon video done the day before I usually do it, which is rushing to get it in by the last day of the month. You know, sometimes it gets busy here. So that was I thought was like a Mandela effect moment, because I'm going, oh my God. And I'm like looking on my television, you know, because the date is on the I'm like, it's the 29th. And I'm like, how can it be February 29th? I'm sure February only has 28 days. I was happy to find out that I'm not insane. Leap year. That explains it. But the good news is all you guys got your Patreon or channel member video early, and I'm glad for that, right? So I'm very happy, because I haven't been to the cabin in about 3 weeks or a month, because the road conditions, 3 feet of snow, or 0-degree temperatures, -10, whatever. I'm like, no. It's, for those unaware, my cabin is like a mile or two off of the pavement. Like, you got to go down a dirt road in the woods to get to the cabin, and if it snows too bad, you can't make it through there. So there's always a month or two in the winter where I'm in a bad mood because I can't get that cabin time in. But I'm going to be doing that this weekend, and it'll be 50. I'm getting going on the new porch. I'm fine with working outside when it's 35 or warmer. And by the way, my wife is a great woman. She got me a heated vest, which I'm excited about. I think maybe I can start working outside when it's 20. Who knows how warm I will be, but it's cool. You recharge it, and then it's got these heating elements in it. Keeps you real warm. I'm going to be trying that out this weekend, and probably reviewing it for the new cabin channel. But finally getting some cabin time in. But we've got replays. Well, we've got these 2 episodes of Murder in UFO Land, Friday and Saturday night at 9 p.m. And then Sunday and Monday, we've got 2 free documentaries airing here. 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, both Sunday and Monday. Now, I might change that because, or we might punt those further in the week because we have to run some live shows if things are popping. But we'll see. Right now they're scheduled. I can always change the scheduled date on those. So that's all I got for you, friends. We want to thank each and every one of you for your kindness, generosity, and support. We want to thank you kind and generous Patreon supporters, you PayPal pledgers. Let's just check in with the PayPal before we close our broadcast. For those unaware, we read every single super chat. We read every single PayPal every episode. If you send a PayPal, just add a note and give us your chat room user ID. We want to thank Initials HC for a kind and generous $25 PayPal. And the message simply says, keep up the great work. Love your show. Well, we love the support from you. Thank you for your kindness, generosity, and support, and helping us to praise the cash.
Praise the cash, praise the cash, praise the cash.
All right. So we've done our due diligence. I'm going to get some cabin time, but I will be in those live chats over the weekend to answer comments or questions. So I'll be there listening with you. I just will not be live. And please, I'm going to pin it. Like, people get so confused. Like, is this live? Like, no. Sometimes it's a replay. But I did take the time from those 2 episodes. I think what confuses people sometimes is me interacting with live chat members who aren't in the live chat. So I cut those parts, which are usually at the end of our show. I cut those parts for these 2 premieres. I hope you'll support us. I really want to relaunch that series. I think it's going to be great. I'd appreciate your attendance. So that's all I got for you, friends. Until next time, my name is Stephen Canby, and good night, and God bless all of you.
Simon, yeah, Simon Fly is blocked. Yeah, Simon, yeah, Simon Fly is blocked. Yeah, Simon Fly is blocked. Simon Fly is blocked. Simon Fly is blocked. Simon Fly is blocked. Simon Fly has a very bad reputation for fun. Simon Fly has a very bad reputation for fun. It is! Simon Fly has a very bad reputation for fun. Simon Fly has a very bad reputation for fun. It is! I can't see anything Simon Fly says, because we always fight, he always starts shit. I can't see anything Simon Fly says, because we always fight, he always starts shit. Simon Fly. Simon Fly. Simon Fly.
Disclosure.
Simon Fly. Alright, alright, alright. It is. Alright, alright, alright. It is. Alright, alright, alright.
Disclosure.
It is. Alright, alright, alright. It is. Simon Fly. It is. It is. It is. Simon Fly. It is. It is. It is. Aria, 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 aria.
Multiple sources.
Sources.
Multiple sources.
3 sources.
Credible sources.
3 sources.
Credible sources. Multiple sources.
Sources.
Multiple sources.
3 sources.
Credible sources.
3 sources.
Credible sources.
Fighter jets were deployed.
Multiple sources.
Fighter jets were deployed. Sources. I've heard it now from 3 different people.
Yeah, I've heard the same thing.
I've heard it now from 3 different people.
Yeah, I've heard the same thing. The lack of information, the lack of information, the lack of information, the lack of information.
This is an ongoing mystery.
Multiple sources.
This is an ongoing mystery.
Multiple sources.
Intelligence sources.
This is an ongoing mystery.
Multiple sources.
This is an ongoing mystery.
Multiple sources.
Intelligence sources.
The lack of information, 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 the lack of information,
Multiple sources.
Multiple sources.
3 sources.
Credible sources.
3 sources.
Credible sources. Multiple sources.
Sources.
Multiple sources.
3 sources.
Credible sources.
3 sources.
Credible sources.
This is an ongoing mystery.
Multiple sources.
This is an ongoing mystery.
Multiple sources.
Intelligence sources.
This is an ongoing mystery.
Multiple sources.
This is an ongoing mystery.
Multiple sources.
Intelligence sources.
over. Skinwalker Ranch. Game over. Skinwalker Ranch.
No credible evidence of extraterrestrial activity.
Game over. Skinwalker Ranch. Game over. Skinwalker Ranch.
No credible evidence of extraterrestrial activity.
Game over. Skinwalker Ranch. Game over. Skinwalker Ranch.
No credible evidence of extraterrestrial activity.
That is God penetrating your heart. It's burning on the inside of you, and you need to make a vow of faith of $1,000. Oh, Bob, couldn't you say 25? No! You can't make a $1,000 vow of faith. I'm saying in faith. So we got people that don't have, teenagers that have hardly nothing going for them. They got enough faith to make a $1,000 vow and send a little $5 here and $10 there as God begins to move like a whirlwind in their life. Because they don't have that old programming of religion. Well, this isn't the way we do it in my church. Forget your church. I'm talking about what God says. And if you want the kind of miracles that are in the Bible, you're going to have to do what God said to do. And I've got the faith to believe they'll come to pass. This is hot soil for anyone that's got the faith to sow into it right now. I mean right now. I mean right now, not tomorrow. That's part of your problem. God's already spoken a word to you and told you to do it. You need to do it right now. If you'll start now and get your seed of faith into the ground, it'll begin to grow and God begin to move. Thank you, Lord. Thank you, Lord. Thank you, Lord. This is somebody's day of harvest. You see, there's a time to fast and a time to feast. There's a time to sow, so there'll be a time to reap. Many people want to reap and they want to feast, but they're not willing to pay the price to sow in order that they can reap. You can't see what's not seen until you let go of what is seen. And I'm talking about your money, because your money is you. It's your blood, it's your sweat, your tears. It's driving down the freeways. It's going to work. It's believing. It's you. And letting go of it makes room for the new. Lot's wife didn't want to go on, and that was the end. Thank you, Lord. I have said your word, and now I'm going to pray for those that's got the faith to do something with what they believe. Thank you, Jesus. Here's a $1,000 vow. Thank you, Lord. Thank you, Lord. You say you want to make a $500 vow? Then do it. Then do it. If that takes faith for you, do it. You want to make a $100 vow? Or if that takes faith, see, I like 1,000. Because I know I got you.